Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're going to be looking at spellcasting, and specifically, we're going to be looking at Ranger spellcasting. A lot of people slept on the Ranger at the beginning of D&D 5e, probably because it didn't start with the greatest subclasses in the world, or the greatest abilities when it came to their first level abilities. Effectively, when you were a low level ranger, you were just kinda not that great. But the reason I think a lot of people slept on the ranger and didn't like it until the subclasses became better and it got revised in Tasha's and things like that is because, for all intents and purposes, a ranger is a fighter. And here's my explanation for that. They get a d10 hit die, which is great. They get all weapons, martial included, and that means they can fight in melee just like they can fight at ranged. Rangers don't have to use bows. And they can wear all armor except for heavy armor. And if you really wanted heavy armor, you could get that through training or a feat. There's a lot of ways you could pull that off. Which makes them a fighter. They even get fighting styles, maybe not to the same degree. But what makes them better than the fighter, in my opinion, is the fact that they get magic intrinsically. They don't get cantrips, so, the Eldritch Knight has them beat on that. But they do get half casting. Starting at level 2, they get to pick magical spells that they can use in battle, and that's something that the fighter never got. Unless you were an Eldritch Knight, like I mentioned. So, what kind of magic would a ranger use, and how does that make them better? I've made a top 5 list of ranger spells that I would suggest taking as your first level spells. Starting at number 5, you have Ensnaring Strike. This actually resembles a Paladin's Smite, since you cast it as a bonus action and concentrate on it for a minute until you hit with it. Once you hit with a weapon attack, you cause the creature to make a strength save. If they fail it, a bunch of vines jump out of the ground and restrain the creature, which reduces them speed to 0 and gives you advantage on attacks against them. They can use a strength check later on to try to break out, but it requires them to do their action or someone else use their action to do it. So it's a nice restraining effect. It also does an extra 1d6 piercing damage for every turn they're wrapped up in the vines. So it's a nice battlefield control spell, which just requires a bonus action and an attack. So, good start for the ranger. Then at number 4, you have Absorb Elements. Turns out the rangers got defensive magic too. They can use Absorb Elements as a reaction when they're hit by an elemental attack, so fire, lightning, cold, etc. It reduces the damage by half. So this means that a ranger has a pseudo-evasion ability, kind of like the rogue, except instead of a free ability, it takes a spell slot, and it reduces AoE effects, but it can also reduce direct attacks if you were hit by some sort of magical effects or a trap. It doesn't have to come from a spell, it just has to come from any elemental attack. It reduces it by half, and then it also means that your melee weapon absorbs that damage, and the next time you hit, you will do an extra 1d6 of whatever damage you took. Not bad. I will admit it doesn't do much good for ranged rangers, but the point isn't the extra damage. The point is the defensive capabilities. So that's a really good one. Then at number 3, we have Goodberry, because the rangers had to heal too. You cast the spell as an action, and you create 10 magical berries. Each one can feed a person for a full day's worth of food, and heals for 1 hit point. So you just created a tiny healing effect, which is really handy when you've got a party member that's down making death saves. You force feed them a good berry, they're good to go, at least with 1 hit point. But that's better than making death saves. This is great for survival purposes, for healing purposes. The ranger gets a nice slew of these spells, and these berries last for 24 hours, so not bad. Then at number 2, we have the classic ranger spell, Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Mark is a really, really good spell, and here's why. You cast it as a bonus action, you concentrate on it for an hour. When you cast it, you designate a creature. That creature, every time you hit them, as long as you're concentrating on the spell, they take an extra 1d6 damage. That's every time you hit them, so extra attacks count for this, so multiple times per turn. Also, you have advantage on survival and perception checks to track this creature, so that's helpful. If you have to chase someone down, you can hunter's mark them. But what's great about this spell is as long as you're still concentrating on it, if that creature dies, you just have to spend another bonus action, not another spell slot, to mark another creature. So now you just get extra damage, basically all the time, as long as you're using Hunter's Mark effectively and maintaining concentration, which can be tricky when you're, a tougher character like a ranger, but it's still well worth the spell slot. And a lot of people place it as the number one level 1 spell. But I disagree. There's one spell that rangers get that's better, and a lot of people sleep on this spell because it's in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, not the player's handbook. And it's the last spell in the book. It's Zephyr Strike. Zephyr Strike is a spell which creates maneuverability and extra damage in a way that Hunter's Mark doesn't. You cast Zephyr Strike as a bonus action. You maintain concentration on it for a minute. During that minute, your movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. So it's just the disengage action permanently, which is awesome. But it does more than that. When you make an attack on your turn, the first attack on your turn, you do an extra 1d8 force damage, which is a damage that's not easy to resist or block. So this gives the ranger ways to fight creatures that are resistant to regular weapons. And when you make an attack on your turn, whether you hit or miss, you get an extra 30 feet of movement speed for the entire minute of the concentration. That's key. You get the extra movement speed. You get the disengage action. And you only get to make the attack one time during the concentration. So I've seen a lot of rangers cast Zephyr Strike whenever they need to do the extra damage, but they don't have to. If you just want to do the extra damage one time and then just maintain the disengage action as long as you're focusing on concentration, that works. You can do that. But a lot of people are just in it for the damage. Either way, this spell does it all. Permanent disengage, as long as you're concentrating, the extra speed, and the extra damage. Zephyr Strike is a win-win when it comes to ranger spells, and for me, takes the number 1 spot over Hunter's Mark. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below, and keep your eyes peeled for more spellcasting videos coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.